You ready to do this?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to need you to talk at the beginning because we don't have time to, not start, but I need to center myself because I'm all amped up. But we'll see what happens.
Okay.
Just say something to our audience while I sit here and close my eyes for a second. Welcome to the True North Podcast, where two practicing light workers get together every week to continue an ongoing conversation about wholeness and healing for body and mind so that you can follow your true north back to your true self. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Abby. Hello. And Ryan's put me on the spot. He is closing his eyes currently, and he is centering and grounding. Welcome to episode 63. I have no idea what we're going to talk about today, but here we are. Something fun's going to come out of it.
Something fun always does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I woke up at 4:30 and I wrote something in our little notes and then I went back to sleep and I don't know what it said. So we're all about to be surprised.
Okay. Tell me, what does it say?
It says, there's a lot of things. There are so many things. I was on fire. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to let you take your pick. See, if this was like a live audience thing, we could just have people vote and be like, choose your own adventure.
What do you want to talk about? Mm-hmm.
So I have levels of motivation, an epiphany I had while playing Pokemon. Mm-hmm. Releasing myself from my need to identify as someone who has grown.
I actually want to go to number 4 on that list, living in the past and future in healthy ways, because of course, that struck me.
Yes, I knew it would.
Uh-huh. You said you saw a tweet somewhere where someone said, I'd sell my soul to watch a 1 hour highlight reel of me and my buddies' funniest moments. And I thought, man, I feel like I do that every day. I'm always hit with positive memories. And then you go on to talk about other things. So,
and then I realized bullet points.
Tell me more.
Okay, so living in the past and the future are ego territory, right? That's just what the ego does. Mm-hmm. And in general, a lot of the problems we make for ourselves tend to be from either living in the past or the future, and in some way projecting those onto the present. And so we like to say, don't live in the past and the future, because it kind of nips it off at the bud. Nips it off at the bud, nips it in the bud. Nips it in the bud. And then I realized when I read this tweet and had that thought that I can go into the past in a way that isn't that. And we've been kind of having this conversation about reframing our relationship with ego. That's not the adversary. It's just part of the whole mix, but it's not the whole mix, right? Mm-hmm. And so I just had this thought that all the time we visit the past, and then when we come back to the present, all we take with us is gratitude. That's what this person's saying. A highlight reel of me and my buddy's funniest moments.
Sure.
Now, you can do that and you can come back and say, man, life sucks because it's not as good as it was then. Or you can just come back to the present and say, wow, I'm really glad that happened. I have nothing but gratitude. Mm-hmm. And so then I go to other things in the past. I'll just go through the bullet points. We can mourn the fact that we lose at things that aren't happening anymore, aka my dad. Or B, we can analyze them to see what we did wrong or should have done better, or how the past could have been better, so that we can take those lessons and put them in the future, but in the present. But then we're just kind of trying to control the future, and we're still motivated by past things. That's rumination, that's over control. Or C, we could just be grateful for them. Mm-hmm. I think going to the past and reliving stuff is not inherently a problem. We just happen to bring problems back with us when we come back to the present from our visits to the past. But we don't have to. That's a choice. We can just come back with gratitude. I'm going to stop there before I go to the future one.
I do have to say that, when I first read that, of course it struck me the wrong way. I was like, no, you cannot live in the past and the present. And then I sat with it for a while because I thought, well, that's exactly what gratitude is, though. You're right. It's pulling from the past and finding those silver linings in your experiences and your memories that you carry with you. But again, exactly what you said, it's not to control the future in any way. It's just recognizing what is and coming to an acceptance of it and an appreciation for it. So then I thought, okay, it's just the wording. I just don't, because when it said living in the past or present, this is where
I guess that doesn't imply staying there.
Well, yeah,
you don't want to stay there.
So, of course, I'm back into writing, so I'm reading studies kind of right and left. And so I read this one where the research that came out of this particular study showed that 47% of people spend or not 40%, people spend about 47% of their time in a day not sitting in the present moment, like doing things, basically having no idea what they're actually doing. So
Because
it's like,
they're
because they're elsewhere in their mind. It's like, do you have that day? And especially this happens to me when I get overwhelmed and when I have a lot on my to-do list. I will go through my day and realize I have no idea what I've done. I don't remember what I've completed. And I especially notice that when I go to try to write my gratitudes and I'm like, I have no fucking clue what even happened today. And it's because I wasn't in my mind. I wasn't even present. And so I guess this is why I wanted to talk about this, because I think there's a place for it. There's a difference in reflection and rumination. And then I also feel like that's what reflection is it's looking back and evaluating circumstances, but it's not living in that space. Like that's a conscious choice to sit in the past and even there's something really cool. Like the science of well-being is like this whole study coming out of Stanford right now. They have this whole class built around it where one key component to having a happy, healthy, like well-being is anticipation. And so sometimes like that is even greater than the actual event that you're excited about.
Yes.
And so having this anticipation, which I'm so excited, like our world's sort of getting back to normal, is because we have things on the calendar and now there's this anticipation and excitement again for things coming up. So there's a place for that that's also healthy, but it's not a control of the future. Like anticipating something, you have to be very careful not to attach an outcome to the thing that you're excited about. Just sitting in the anticipation. But that is a future event, and then there's the gratitude and the reflection piece where that is a past event. But those are very mindful practices that don't take you out of your mind when you are tasking with something else, because then it becomes rumination, it becomes worry, it becomes projection.
Yes, and that's the second half of like living in the future in a healthy way. Is you can either look forward to the future with anxiety and try to control what you think might happen, or you can look forward to it with anticipation and excited about what might happen. And I changed the words while you were talking too. Instead of living in the past and future, just visiting in the past and future.
Yes, I like that.
Just pay it a visit. Because even when I'm like, if I ever like start beating myself up for something, one of the things that you do with me is you have me go back into the facts and find proof to the contrary, right? Well, that's me going into the past. But it's intentional, it's mindful. I'm looking for a certain thing, and I'm bringing back the good stuff. Right?
Yeah.
And so, like you said, you're looking forward to a vacation. We planned a vacation to London, and the anticipation was almost more fun than being there. Yes. Just because it's the unknown. It's an exciting unknown. We talked about the resistance to change because we have a fear of the unknown. But if you have a different mindset, the unknown could be the very thing that is exciting. You can only ride a roller coaster for the first time once.
Exactly.
And it's different than every other time you ride it, no matter how much fun you have. You can only read a book the first time once, so like there's something about discovery that is exciting and exhilarating, and you look forward to it. But a key component of discovery is the fact that it is yet to be discovered. It is unknown. And so there's just this kind of like, you're here and you dip into the past and you come back with gratitude. You dip into the future and you come back with anticipation. You're always coming back, and it feels like playing with fire, because you go to those places and then you're on a knife's edge. Like you could fall off so easily into so many destructive things, so many fear-based things, so many, and so it does make sense if you're not trained to do this to just say, just get rid of it altogether. Just get rid of it all. Like, I don't want to go there. Because the odds of me coming back with something painful are greater than the odds of me coming back with something healthy, right? I guess painful and healthy aren't the right things to oppose, but you know what I mean. And so it's kind of like the conversation we had about the 5 love languages. How I was all like, "They're so stupid," and you're like, "Well, they're a tool for people who have no idea how to relate to their partner. It's a primer. It's just to get you in the mode of thinking, how do they receive love? And then if they have a love language that's not one of the 5, that's fine. You don't have to stick in that framework and say this is the answer key. But it's a good jumping off point if you're untrained in the art of learning about your partner, right? And so in the same way, if someone's not trained in going to the past and coming back without the muck, then it may behoove them to stay out of the past, or the same with the future. And so it can be good advice to a certain selection of people to just do everything you can to stay right here. Right? That's like telling your little kid, don't watch rated R movies. There's nothing inherently wrong with them, but it's more likely that they'll come out with something unhealthy than, they haven't fleshed out how to interact with it yet. And so then, but there's another stage to that evolution where then you can dip into the past and come back and try to come back with gratitude, try to come back with proof that you're not a piece of shit, try to come back with reasons to have compassion for the person that you're hurt by. That's all in the past. Or you dip into the future without trying to control it, without being afraid of what's there or what's not there or what's out of your hands. Like dip into the future just long enough to find some magical unknown that you can look forward to with anticipation and get really excited about arriving at, and bring all those things back into the present and let them inform how you do now. And I needed to work that out because I am naming that because I have felt myself turn that page very recently. Even I think if someone just sits there and binge listens to our podcast, they're going to hear a lot of me talking about stay out of the past and stay out of the future. A lot of us talking about that,
right.
But now I'm at a point where I'm like, can I dip my toe in? That's okay,
Yeah.
If I move to a place, and so I just also want to just give people permission to. It's not this is always closed for good forever. This is now your path for the rest of your life. It serves people at some point to not go there, and then at another point, it serves them to learn how to go there.
Yes, but it's another tool. And what I'm hearing you say is like when you were going there and you're pulling from the past, or when I'm guiding you through that, it's a single task at hand. It's not you're doing something else and you're just sort of thinking about it. Like you're intentionally reflecting, and that's what it is. It's a reflection tool where you're getting prompts, you're asking questions, you're getting really curious, you're intentionally doing it versus just mindlessly walking through your day. Just ruminating on
if you
stuff.
find yourself accidentally like you're in the past and you don't know how you got there or how long you've been there, that's a sign that it's probably time to come back to the present, because you probably just missed what the person in front of you was saying. Like that's a key component. I'm so glad you said that. It's something you do on purpose.
Yes.
When you get to the point so in one state you're living in the past and ruminating on the future absently, like you don't even realize you're doing it, and it takes effort to come back to the present, and it takes effort to stay there. Eventually, like we've said with the 4 stages of learning, it becomes something, being present is something that you do naturally, and then going to the past or the present is something that you do intentionally. It switches. And when you get to that place where presence is your MO, you have the tools to then go into the past or the present and have boundaries against taking back with you the things that cause problems. And so at the very bottom of this little thing I wrote, bottom line, we are stuck with our ego. I think ego death is maybe a misguided thing to pursue. Instead, why don't we partner with our ego? If it insists on living in the past and future, why not redesign our relationship with those activities such that they produce gratitude from the past and openness from the future, instead of regret from the past and fear from the future?
Oh, you said something about regret. You just said regret.
Because how often do we go in the past and come back with just regret?
Yeah, but so I'm going to throw this out there. I heard this the other day, and I took note of it because I don't know what I think about it yet. Regret is a form of empathy. Is regret the regret that leads to change, or is it just rumination?
We need to tease out the difference between regret and remorse.
There you go. There you go. Yeah.
As I understand those literally almost just fell off of my bar stool for no reason. I was doing nothing and gravity just decided to be a douchebag. Okay. See, I'm literally not centered.
Sorry.
In the middle of talking, you're just going to hear me fade out. Okay, no. As I understand it, regret is to have a negative sentiment towards things in your past in which you got in trouble for what you did. Remorse is to have a negative sentiment towards the things that you've done in your past that have had a detrimental effect on other people. For instance, if I'm a kid and I did a thing and now I'm needing to apologize. Right? Like the powers that be, the parents, like they sit you and the other kid down and say, you apologize for the thing you did. Regret would be, I don't like that I got caught. I don't like that I am in this situation. I don't like that it's now coming back negatively on me, what I did. Remorse is, I see how what I did hurt you. And I regret, I don't like that what I did hurt you. Maybe that's a better way to distill it down. Regret is when you don't like that your past hurts you. Remorse is when you don't like that the things you do in your past hurt others. Or like the external effects. So if you have consequences, or you're getting punished for something, and you wish you hadn't done that because now you're sitting in the punishment, whether it's self-imposed or not, you just regret that.
Right. Feelings.
But then if someone tells me, hey, this thing happened and it really hurt me, and I feel bad about how I did that, do I feel bad because now they don't like me? Because that's regret. Or do I feel bad about the fact that I caused this negative experience for them? That's remorse. And it's not either or. I think you can have both.
Regret
but I think
and remorse?
there's I think you can have. I mean, like even the thing that I talked about in that last episode that I still haven't released. We were talking about a friendship that I have where I got feedback that the way that I've been showing up hasn't they haven't been responding well to it. Right? So in that relationship, I had both. I had remorse for the fact that I contributed and participated in an experience that was that brought pain to her. I think I said them the entire goddamn episode and I just gave away what was it hurt. And I also felt regret because I didn't like the feeling of having to suffer the consequences of like a silent treatment. Like that was uncomfortable for me, you know? So there was both.
So you're identifying remorse as more empathetic than regret. Regret is more
I would say remorse is the empathy.
Yeah. Regret is not love and light. Remorse is.
Yeah, regret is just I don't like that I did a thing and now I have to suffer the consequences and I don't like the consequences.
Right. Yeah. Interesting.
It's all me.
At first I disagreed with you, but now that I think about it and I think about my own experiences, I'm on the same page with you in the difference in regret
Twice
and
in
remorse.
one show.
Twice in one show.
Ryan says something. Abby disagrees. Ryan explains it. Abby agrees.
That's how this works.
That just tells me I need to do words better the first time.
No, because it's like that was a tweet from someone else, which that's why I was like, you know, I just the whole there's that one word living in piece that just I didn't like that.
Yeah. I tweaked it for you. But it is clearer now because you're right. Living in something is like, this is where I'm going to set up shop and camp out for a while. You're not going to come back to the present with good stuff if you do that.
No, and this is interesting. I just led a reflection workshop for new teachers at the school district I contract with, and it's fascinating because reflection is not, you know, we're talking about it being a tool, going in the past as being a tool. We're asking them to look at the entire last year. This is their first time as a teacher. They're either brand new teachers or they're new to this district. So there's just a whole bunch of new on top of all of the changes that happened this year with half virtual students, you know, half in person, whatever the case may be. Like that's a lot. There's a lot of things, good and bad, positive and negative, that have come out of that situation. And so the reflection process that I worked them through was just carefully calculated, because it's really easy to go into that place of rumination and, you know, go into complaining where you're sort of stuck into that negative vortex. And I feel like that's, you know, there are a lot of regrets, like, oh, I could have done that better. I should have done that better. But the whole process was really about using this as a tool to come out like, these are the things that were hard. These are the wins. Even if I didn't win the whole picture, there's still some good things that came out of a particular situation. And identifying those, and then being able to say, okay, now that I have all this information, how do I use this to move forward? Like, what am I grateful for that came out of this? What did I learn that I'm now going to use in the future to do better? I don't know why I'm telling you all this. I really had a point. Oh no, I've lost.
We're talking about regret versus remorse, and then you're talking about an experience where you took the teachers going back. Well, reflection. Like when you do reflection, you're going back into the past, and maybe you were going to tease out like how tricky it is to stay in one or recognize which one you're in, or do you have regrets when you look back, or do you have remorse, or does that change what conclusions you draw?
That's true. And that's kind of where I was going is regret. I feel like you just stay in the past. You just stay in the past. You don't move. You don't change from it. And remorse is, it motivates you because it is empathetic to change, to not do that, to actually go in a different direction. So
Yeah. So a regret can be seen as empathy if somebody lumps regret and remorse into the same word, which some people do. That's fine. I have a really, really nasty habit of teasing out words and saying these. Like, I have a whole article I wrote on this blog that nobody's ever read about how mazes and labyrinths are actually opposites from each other according to like their definitions. And I finished that and I was so proud of myself. And then I read it like 6 years later. I'm like, Ryan, nobody fucking cares. This is stupid. You're just splitting hairs for the sake of splitting hairs. Don't.
Well, and it sounds like I don't know where. Of course, I didn't make a note of where I saw this information, but I mean, they are saying wherever I got this from, regret is a form of empathy, and so it could be that yes, this person is interchanging regret and remorse together.
Which is fine. Maybe I'm wrong. You know what? Oh, wow. I just Googled the phrase, regret is a form of empathy. And the very first article in the SERP, which is search engine result page, was an article on psychologytoday.com. The title is Regret versus Remorse.
Ah, interesting.
Brene Brown on using regret as a tool for growth.
That's probably where I heard it, from her podcast, I would guess. Because she says everything.
They moved to Spotify, and I did not follow her to Spotify. That's how lazy I am. If it's not an Apple podcast, I'm just not going to listen to it.
Why can't they be both?
I don't know. I don't know how it all works. We're all over the place, except, no, we are on Spotify.
Yes. Okay,
this is super helpful to our audience right now.
And we're coming back. Let's come back. Yeah. So this has got me kind of all this thinking, and then that's been going on. I've been teaching these reflection workshops with our tribe. We've been talking a lot about attaching outcomes, both positive and negative, to these future events, and sort of how that's been throwing a lot of us off. And so I decided to go on this mission to do this like mindful in May piece. So I did the stillness challenge with my people in April, but now for May, I think, I really want to focus on being a lot more mindful and just showing up. And so I'm going to be pushing this idea of like single tasking, because I think the only way to start to use reflection and like anticipation as tools, as they should be, like intentional practices, you first have to learn how to be present. Single tasking as an antidote to multitasking. Yes. Is that what, like, get everything else off the plate except for one thing? Multitasking is not, like, if you're multitasking, basically what you're doing is you're doing one thing, but you're also thinking about this other thing that you're doing over here, or you're thinking about... Or you're switching back and forth. Exactly. Yeah. You're not really present in this one thing, giving your entire focus to the conversation you're having, to the task that you're doing. And so I'm really focusing, like laundry. Usually when I'm in the laundry room folding my laundry, I am off somewhere else, because it's a rote task. It's something that I do all the time. I know how to fold laundry. I'm sort of in that unconscious competent stage where I don't have to think about what I'm doing anymore. But that's like the perfect opportunity. Whoa. Yes. Okay, what? Sorry, I was just trying to relate to what you were saying, and I realized I'm like in my mind imagining what goes through my head when I'm doing laundry. You know what goes through my head when I'm doing laundry? Literally. What? Take this article of clothing out here, figure out if it needs to be hung up. If it's not hung up, put it in the dryer. Okay, it's in the dryer. Go get this. Detach these because I have to. And then, like, I am hyper thinking about what I'm doing. And then when I'm folding, it's like, do I trifold this or do I bifold this? How do I fold the underwear? Where do the t-shirts go? And I'm making stack. Like, I am nowhere else but in laundry mode. And I am thinking with all of my faculties on the
task that is literally in my hands, and if I don't, then laundry just stops happening.
With laundry.
I have like literally been doing laundry, and like, if something else happens in my mind, I will stop doing laundry and go do something else. And like laundry and dryer are like they're both just open, and like damp clothes are hanging out of the washer, and I'm just doing something else because anything else is more interesting than laundry. And so I have to like give it up my all, anyway, sorry, that's why I was laughing. I was like, no, that's the exact opposite. So when you're doing laundry, you're elsewhere.
So
it's a real
I'm
task.
elsewhere. Yes. For me, it's like, it's a task that I don't have to think about. I just hang the things that need hung and put the things in the dryer that need dried. And I that's where I am ruminating or doing future projections that do not serve me. And so I just finding myself getting really caught up in this statistic of 47% of my time I am elsewhere. And I'm like, I really need to come back to my life. I need to come back, because then am I really living? Am I really enjoying life? Am I really savoring? Am I really finding gratitude? Because I am not in that present moment. So I've just decided to kind of use May to just sort of retrain myself to come back to these mindful moments. And I'm using laundry, driving in the car, like these really simple tasks. When I'm cooking, if it's something I'm cooking that I make all the time and it's not new and exciting, I'm trying to be very intentional about like the colors and the smells and like how my body feels as I'm folding the laundry. Like I love to be in my laundry room because it smells so freaking good. I have all my essential oils in there. You have the smell of fresh laundry, other than my wet dog that I occasionally smell because it's also her kennel. Everything in there smells really good. And so but how often do I really notice that? Like rarely, because I don't stop and think it smells good. Like I'm not present in that moment. So May, I am practicing mindful in May, where I'm just going to try to retrain myself to be
monotasking.
I call it single tasking, monotasking. Yeah. Where literally you are
I love that.
Doing one thing. And if you like, if I find a time where I need to multitask, then I'm going to have to choose. Like I'm going that, when you do your tell everybody no challenge. Yeah. Yes. Like I am fully like, and there's a boundary, like for this month, it is a hard no to multitasking.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then when you're faced between having to choose which of the things that you want to do, you're actually going to do, you're then also working out your prioritization muscles, because you have to have like a set of decision rules about how to figure out which one to do. And so then that's a great idea. Do
Here's
all
the other
things
crazy thing
the way that Ryan does laundry.
Do all things. Yes, do all things. Because I mean, like our kids do that, right?
Yeah, they do. They are only doing the thing that they're doing.
They are only doing the thing, and they are so immersed in it, and they can tell you, like I watched this old video of my son from when he was like just starting to talk, super young, and he's sitting, all he's doing, and I don't know why we recorded this, but he's sitting on the back porch out at the lake eating yogurt, and that's it. There's like no TV on, we're not talking, and he's eating, and all of a sudden, like we ask him, like, what do you taste? And he's like, this is strawberry, and he goes, oh, do you hear that bird? Like he called out every sense. Like he heard a bird chirping. He could tell you
he's just in the middle
taste.
Of it.
Yeah. He could tell you, the smell of, everything. He could hear like Annie panting in the background. Like it was amazing. And I thought, oh my gosh, how much do we miss? And so we need to get back to being kids again.
Holy shit, you just transitioned into one of the things I was thinking about whether or not I was going to try to bring up in this episode. That's you just described like a mindfulness practice, right? Like I'm still going through that MBCT course, and he was talking about having a mindfulness practice and some tools you can use, and it's basically just stop and notice. Just stop doing and start noticing. That's the whole thing behind having a mindfulness practice. But you just said the magic words, get back to being kids. And one at the very top of my list, the thing that I actually woke up to write down last night, was on moving back, and how that's not a real thing. And I like, again, this is like a lot of what I do is I just get nitpicky about semantics, and I'm just going to own up front that that's what this is. But there are relationships in which the external expression of those friendships seem to have moved back in my life for various reasons. You get to know somebody and you're strangers, and then you're acquaintances, and then you're friends, and then maybe you get really integrated. Maybe after 10, 20 years of knowing each other, it's like a sibling thing, right? And we have this forward motion. Or like in relationships, you meet somebody, you're talking, you're flirting, you're dating, whatever. And there's always this forward motion. The second it stops moving forward or starts to feel stagnant, or God forbid, it starts moving back, we start thinking that there's a problem. And there's this phrase like, you just can't move back in relationships. But I don't know that I agree with that paradigm, because like I have a relationship that I just moved back, quote unquote, moved back in. For all intents and purposes, we're basically acquaintances now, right? But we had a conversation about it as adults and looked at what we want out of relationships, what we're capable of offering to relationships, how much bandwidth we have in our lives for the type of relationship that we had, the closeness that we had. Is it sustainable? Is it feeding our souls? Is it more? Does it require more than we're actually able to give? What else are we sacrificing to be able to keep this connection going? And we kind of both agreed that acquaintances are better for both of us. You would think that would be a move back, because at one point we were acquaintances and then we got really close, and now we're just, for all intents and purposes, if you were to externally look at our friendship, you would say we were just acquaintances again. But all those other moves into what they moved into were without intention. It was just us following a script. It was us just kind of going along the trajectory that society says is a natural, organic flow of connection and building those things, right? And so now we're back at what looks like acquaintances, but it's on the other side of having an intentional adult conversation. It's on the back of laying out all our cards and saying, what do I need? What do you need? What can I give? What can you give? What works? What doesn't work? What's sustainable? What's not sustainable? What does it cost us? What do we get out of it? And our new paradigm is built on that foundation, which is a new thing that was not there before. And I found that in several of my relationships in the past less than a month or so, things seem to have gone back. There was a level of closeness that now feels less close. But every single one of those, it's really a movement forward, because there's intention behind it. There's an intentional same pageness behind it. There's clear communication behind it. There's acknowledging and kind of directing the flow instead of letting it direct you. And so I don't know that moving back is really a thing. You know, going back to like emulating what Patrick was doing. Do you say his name on the podcast? Do I need to edit that out?
No, you don't. I don't often, but you don't have to edit it out. Okay.
Going back to, as an adult, trying to have the experience that he had, eating yogurt, tasting the strawberry, hearing the birds, right? As an adult, that's a move forward, because it's built on top of the context of all of the other experiences that you've had. And for him to do it, it's just because that's what humans do, and he's just really good at being a human, because he hasn't learned how to be all the other junk that we try to be.
Exactly.
You know?
Right.
But on the other side of it, you've already learned some stuff, and some of it's helped you and some of it hasn't. And you're unlearning some stuff, and you're relearning some new stuff. And one of those things is how to stop and notice. And so your act of stopping and noticing, while on the outside might look a lot like a kid just naturally living and existing, but for you it means something different. It's built on something different. It's made of different Legos, and it has a whole different collection of intentions behind it. You know, so in a weird way, I want to say we should move forward into being like our kids.
Well,
you know,
yeah, you're right. And then going back to talking about, you know, your friendships and going back to being acquaintances, I don't know if you're going, I see, I even said it because that's the terminology we use, going back.
That's the terminology, right?
Yeah.
Going back
to being acquaintances. But it's almost like it reminds me of that phrase, Byron Katie, just loving what is. Like you right now, you are just, both of you, and it sounds like it's like, I wish all relationships were like this, just very emotionally mature, where you're just in mutual agreements that at this point in both of your lives, that serves you better to be in that place. And that may not have been the case then, and it may not be the case in the future, but in this very present moment, that works for both of you. It meets your needs, and you're able to communicate that where nobody's feelings are hurt. It just is what it is.
Right.
And so, yeah, maybe not going back to, if we apply that to like being a kid, maybe not going back to being a kid. Maybe I just need to show up in my life and let it be what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And not think about all the other things.
Yes, and loving what is surrender. Holy fuck, man. That is a muscle you got to work out.
Yes.
And it's like going to the gym. When you're in the gym and your hands are around the barbell, you have to actually use the muscles, right? All the rest of the day, you have them. You could use them. You don't have to use them, but they're there and ready because you've done all the work to get them where they need to be, so that when you're actually at a point where you have to use them, you have the strength to use them, right? Well, and so surrender. I had the ability to surrender. This person, I would send a TikTok to every single morning. Every morning. It was like a little connection point that's like, hey, here's something to make you smile today. Every fucking morning. And then after this conversation, the next morning, I sent her a text. I said, so are you still up for getting the daily dose of TikTok? And she said, nope. And I just said, okay. And there were zero hurt feelings on my end. I don't know what her experience was, but I didn't make up a story about what that means for me or doesn't mean for me or me. Like there was nothing. It was just like, okay, that's where we're at. And I have gratitude for the fact that we have that level of communication.
Yeah. Right.
Which is a new thing, which is why I don't count it going back. But I don't know. Even when you think about people who divorce, like that seems like the ultimate step back. But it's really not. It's a move forward into something else. Because before, like you're going back to being not an item, and at one point in your past you were also not an item, so it feels like you're not going back. But what you have now that you didn't have then was the history. Yeah, right. And the growth and the development and the things you learned, or the things that you could choose to take as learnings, and that's all forward movement. It's all forward movement.
We talked about change, and I was describing it like stairs. Like you're never going to be back at the bottom. Like you might be down a step or two, but you're higher than where you were when you started. It's like because you
had a
still
different square one of a new
and then
cycle.
The divorce doesn't take you back down to the beginning again. You can't. You have all that. It just now your stairs split.
But you now are in a new paradigm. Yeah,
I was thinking about when you were talking about being in the gym. You go to the gym and you work out. And you have these muscles, and they're there for when you use them. And it's interesting. I was having this conversation about training this morning. I've just ramped up my training again so I can start racing because I'm highly competitive. I do train, and I train hard. And I came to this place where I've been working out. I still work out 6 days a week. I still do something, but it's just not at that same intensity, the same level of training. And then my nutrition's off, I'm kind of off on some other self-care practices. And so it's just more, I'm just doing something to sort of sweat and get out the emotions. And so when I got back into training and I'm starting to push my body a little bit harder, it's like, holy fuck, what happened? Like I should be able to do this. I should be able to run this distance at a much faster pace than what I'm actually doing. And what I realized is while my training has slowly, I don't know what the right word is, left me, even though I was still working out. So in my mind, it's I should still be at that same level, but my working out was not at training level. But in my mind, it's I was telling myself this story, oh yeah, I'm still an athlete. I can still go do this today. When not, yes, to a certain degree I could, but, because I wasn't being mindful about it anymore, it left me, it's gone. And even though it was this false sense of, I had more than I actually had. And then when I realized I didn't have it, it pissed me off. But when we're talking about surrender and all of these practices, how it really is like a muscle. And you made me think of, when you go to the gym and you're training and you've got these muscles and they're there for when you use them. And when you go into fight or flight, your body defaults to what it knows. Well, if you've got the muscle, when you're fit and all of a sudden you go to lift something that maybe in the past would have been incredibly difficult for you, and you've been heaving and puffing and just really kind of hard for you to do. And then all of a sudden one day after you've been working out in the gym, you pick that same thing up and it's wow, that was really easy. Because you weren't working out, so to speak, those muscles at that time, but they were there and available to you because you've been practicing, because you've been working out.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what all these tools are that we're talking about. Like even sitting in the past intentionally using reflection, sitting in the future with anticipation, and excitement of these events. Those are tools that you have to work out. You have to work out.
You have to use them. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. And my therapist said something, because I was talking about how there are times that I know I have a lot of tools I can use for a lot of situations. And I told her that one of my things I'm working on doing right now is consistently being in the habit of doing my best impression of a person who has learned everything I've learned. Because I've learned how to use a lot of tools, and then I find myself embarrassed when I'm in a situation that I would only be in had I not used one of the tools that I knew how to use. Right? So what if I was a person who had actually learned everything that I've learned and then applied it all the time, and that was just me? Like, can I do an impression of that? And of course that feels like perfectionism, and it feels like I'm not enough, and so I'm kind of like wrestling with why I even have that desire. But she framed it interestingly that would only really make sense to people our age or older. But like, there was a time that you had a movie collection. You spent money on each of those individual movies, and you had them in some type of a physical form, like a DVD or something. And there was like storage in your house that was your DVD collection. You would borrow movies from other people. Like, kids won't even know what it means to borrow a movie from somebody.
Exactly.
You know, like,
yes.
Or like I have a DVD. I literally still have a DVD that I borrowed from someone like a year ago because I haven't been able to meet up with her to give it back. And now we have streaming services where instead of paying for all the DVDs individually and having them and possessing them and watching whenever you want, you're paying a small premium to have access to them and more. You're paying for the access, but you're surrendering the possession. And so she was like, don't think about these as tools that you have in your garage that you're choosing not to use. You have subscription to a makerspace that has all the tools you could ever need. And all you're doing is deciding to go and be there or to not. And that kind of took some weight off of me. Like, I felt like I was collecting and acquiring tools. I was collecting learnings and lessons. But then that possession mindset kind of gives you a scarcity mindset. It can't not. It feels finite. And when she told me, you are a multifaceted being, and everything you will ever need is at your disposal right now. And it always will be. And just because you chose not to use it in a moment doesn't mean that that tool isn't still at your disposal. And like, they're not even your tools. They're not yours. You don't have them.
Right.
They're just tools.
Yes.
You know?
I really like that concept.
Yeah.
A subscription
It
to the
blew
tools.
my mind.
Well, yeah. And it's... So I said this to somebody the other day, one of my clients, because she was sitting in the same place where... like, she was getting so mad at herself, and she was making it mean something that she has all these tools and wasn't using them. And so then she was falling apart and in this place. And if only she had used the tools, she wouldn't be here. And I said, no, you've got it all wrong. Like, that's when you start using your tools against you. You know, tools are tools when you need them, but sometimes you just need to be in the muck. Sometimes the muck is the tool. It's the lesson. It's what you need to sit in. And it's not, you know, do not use, it's like using gratitude out of spite. Don't use your tools out of spite.
Which I have done, yes. Yeah.
Don't. And so the idea, like the metaphor of tools, are you have a subscription to the tools, but they are not you. Like that's really
yeah, because then if I don't use a tool, my next question is, did I have the tool to begin with? Did I really learn this lesson to begin with? And that goes back to the whole square one thing we talked about in the change episode. And here's the kicker: your mindfulness practice is your subscription fee.
Absolutely.
You stop paying for Netflix, you stop having access to the movies. You don't do your mindfulness practice, you won't have access to those tools.
Right. It's a good way to look at it.
Yes. I wish I could take credit for it, but it's all my therapist.
Mindful in May. Yeah, well, that's interesting you say that. That I'm on that same vein of thinking with my own therapist. I'm like, that sounds vaguely familiar.
I've heard this before. And And then we talk about growth and wanting, and that's why I said, like, one of the things I want to talk about was my need to identify as someone who has grown. That's an ego boost when I do use the tool. But doing things to get an ego boost feels like a move back. But then we've already established there's no such thing as a move back. You know, like, I'm 35 and now when I'm playing with my kid and I get up off the ground, my back hurts just from the fact that I'm getting off the ground. That's not supposed to happen because in my brain, I'm still an 18-year-old who goes to the gym 4 hours a day. And so I think that's a move back with my physical fitness and I need to move forward, you know, but technically getting fit is the move back because it's moving back to when I was more fit. But it's all a move forward. It's all a move forward because now there are different reasons why I would, like I have a friend who goes to the gym more in his late 30s than he ever did before. And before it was a vanity play and that wasn't sustainable. Or it was a culture thing, or it was going along with what people did. Now it's because his kids are getting older and he wants to get older to see them get older. That's it. He doesn't look like someone who works out.
Right.
And he doesn't care. And so the fact that he is still hitting the gym now, it's not to move back to when he was more fit. It is to move forward into watching his kids hit certain life events and live their lives as long as he possibly can. It is a new type of hitting the gym.
Yeah, it's again going back to just this is what it is right now. This is the cycle of life I'm in. This is what I'm making it mean, how it matters to me at this point in my life. It's not It's not a comparison to something that you've done in the past. It may look similar. You're going to the gym, you're doing movement with your body, it's physical activity, but it is different.
It's always a move forward. It's always, if you ever feel like you're moving back, investigate why it feels backwards, because that's a story you're telling yourself. And there are so many ways that you could just as easily construct a story that is a movement forward.
I think
then the mindset of this is a movement forward could drastically change how you show up as you relate to that change.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're really talking about acceptance. Because when you think you're moving back, typically that's a negative connotation. Like if you're moving back, there's something
you have to move forward,
bad
it's a
with
problem.
That.
Yeah.
And so it really is just acceptance. Like this is where it is for you right now. And there's not necessarily a positive or negative about it. It's just accepting where you are in this very moment and knowing that that is enough. I want to go back and say something about when you're talking about identifying as somebody who has learned all the tools. Yeah, who has grown, who's learned all the tools.
My need to preserve my identity as someone who has the tools and uses them all the time.
Yeah, like that sounds like you hit a destination. Like you hit your endpoint. Right. You've made your goal, and then
I've learned all the things
way,
now.
You failed at that, right? Just in general. And it's it goes back to where did you lose the idea? And this is a blanket question. I'm even asking myself this, the idea that, no, this is still a journey. Like when did you decide I have learned all the tools?
That's the catch-22 because you're never going to learn all the tools.
Exactly.
Right? There's no such thing. And then you're never going to be in a place where you just consistently use all of them all the time. That's not being a human.
Well, and if we're talking about even like your friend where he worked out for vanity and now he works out to see his kids, to be healthy for his kids, like it's a different set of tools.
Yes, it is. They look the same, but it's different. Because they're different. And it's all, and when you decide that you need to identify, this is me talking from personal experience, as somebody who has grown a certain amount, all that does is it invites your own self-scrutiny when you aren't that. When you get below the line, when you get mucky, when you don't use your tools, if you need to identify as somebody who can and will always use all the tools, then all you're going to do is start judging the fuck out of yourself when you're not perfect.
You're attaching an outcome.
Yes, an impossible outcome, mind you. Yeah. We one of our tribe calls, someone was talking about how their growth is defined by the fact that they're always nitpicking themselves to try to find areas that need to be improved. And that leads to a simple question: when are you done? At what point are you just going to just examine your whole self and say, oh, there's nothing left to improve. I have accomplished the mission.
I have arrived.
That's not a thing. And the only growth, if you're in that spot, the best growth for you to do is to learn about how to not do that to yourself. Like self-acceptance is the ultimate lesson you're going to arrive at when you do that. Right? But I have a tendency to attach to an outcome to be very woke all the time. and to be very mature and well-adjusted and compassionate and take things in stride and not get all bent out of shape about stuff. Any advice I would ever give to anybody else, I have this habit of expecting myself to always follow. And I'm working through why that's there and where it comes from, and I'm using my tools on this to investigate what I can learn from it and how I can grow through it and integrate that whole thing. But it's there.
I wonder if that's a trauma response, because
Sure it is.
I have the same desire too. Like, I have this idea that people look at me and think, well, you're a life coach, you should have this all figured out. And like, this is a conversation I've had on this podcast before, where you don't want me to have it all figured out. That's a destination that I'm not wanting to achieve. But yet, yes, I too also get caught up in the mindset of not giving myself a little bit of compassion, that I am human.
Yes.
And I go through things just like everybody else.
That's part of it. And that's where you get to use your muscle of acceptance and surrender. When you don't react the way that you know was best for you to have reacted, can you, to bring it full circle, dip into the past, relive that thing, and find a way to only come back with gratitude?
Yes.
So my dad he was always teaching in the church we grew up in, whether it was a teen group or a Sunday school class or other adults or sermons, he was always teaching. And I remember I was in this teen group that met on Wednesday nights, and it was a Southern Baptist, like very conservative Protestant evangelical environment. So there's a lot of the, if anybody knows what any of those words mean, then I don't even need to give you any more context. And he gave us each a balloon. He blew up a balloon and gave it to every single one of us at the beginning of this hour-long, half-hour, however long it was, session. And he said, your only goal is to not let the balloon pop. That was it. And so we protected the balloon, and we did all the regular things. We played outside, we went to the playground, we played soccer, and by the end of it, all the balloons had popped. Every single fucking one of them had popped. No matter how hard we tried. And he just said, guys, keeping those balloons unpopped is like trying not to sin. It's impossible, because in the Christian world, it's like the sin is the thing that takes you to hell, and like you have to do everything you can not to do sin. Like that's a huge part of your life as a conservative Christian is, how do I just not sin ever? How do I try the best I can to never sin? And then he was like, it's not possible to not sin, and that's not the point. And he made to teenagers. He was telling us the point was never to live a sinless life. The point was always to try.
The practice.
It was the effort and the motivation and the caring, the giving a shit about whether or not the balloon popped. But it's inevitable that eventually your balloon's going to pop. You're going to find yourself in a situation where you're not using the tools. You're going to be below the line. You're going to be in unhealth. You're going to be in muck. You're going to hurt people. That's all part of it. You can't expect yourself not to. You just can't. But you can expect yourself to have grace and compassion and acceptance of yourself when you do that. That, I think, is a goal that you can work for. And
then you just described perfectly kind of what Mindful in May is all about, because did you not then spend that whole night being mindful about not popping
the fucking balloon?
Yes.
I don't remember what the lesson was, that like the actual like Bible teach. I don't remember anything else about that night. But here, how many decades removed, I still remember that my orange balloon popped, and I was really pissed about it.
So, like, let's mic drop right there. We can just leave it right there. Like, mindfulness is not about not having experiences, not having moments where, you don't use your tools, you find yourself in suffering, you find yourself in the muck. But have you tried up into that point to not pop the balloon? Like, are you staying mindful? Are you practicing being mindful, having these mindful moments, trying to live in the present and doing the best you can? I mean, really, that's what this is all about, is just doing the best you can.
Boom.
Yeah. And then when you don't, you pick yourself back up, find a good friend, and keep going.
There's always another balloon.
We're not hardwired to do this stuff. We're not.
No.
It's like, you know what? I'm like, well, why can't I just remember my tools and just follow my own advice? And I can so easily get caught up in that. Well, that's just how we're wired. We are wired to see all of that in order to keep ourselves safe. Like that's just the homeschooler. Tell me the part of the brain, the amygdala.
That's part of it. The whole limbic system. All
exactly.
of it. That's what that part of the brain is here to do.
Exactly. We can't rewrite that. We can't take that away. So
right.
All we do is we find the balance, and you find the balance in just being mindful about the other side that doesn't come natural to us. And when you find the balance, that's when life just starts to balance. I mean, balance. Let's say balance more. Balance.
When you find the balance, it's a balancing act. When you're on the balancing beam, you can't lose your balance because then...
Just balance.
Abby and Ryan find balance. In the episode where I just fell out of my stool for no goddamn reason.
Because you were not balanced. Oh, my goodness.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, what are you grateful for? I don't know why I always say it like a stupid American trying to do an impression of a British person. What are you grateful for?
What are you grateful for? Oh gosh, I have many today, but I think the one I'm going to share with everybody is I'm grateful for my neighbors. I live on a street that, like, for the first time since I moved to Texas 20 some years ago, I know my neighbors. I know almost all of my neighbors. We live on a little horseshoe street, and I know almost all of them. I know their names. I speak to them on a regular basis. And I had that growing up, and I didn't understand the value of that at that time. You're just a kid, you know everybody in the neighborhood. And now, having a kid myself and just knowing that if there were an emergency or something happens, it's like you could go and you have community. It's like he knows somebody. He can go ask for help from a safe person, and they know him, all of that. It's like today, my neighbor, she was getting a new Peloton delivered to her house, and she's like, hey, I'm not home. I have this huge favor. Can you just come sit in my house while they set it up? And I'm like, the fact that a neighbor trusts me to just come into her house and let these people into her house. I'm just grateful that I live in this community where we can connect. And I'm recognizing these people that, are more than friends. They're getting birthday cupcakes, when Patrick turns 6, and just, they're more than neighbors. They're people. So I'm just grateful for my little street of people.
That's so rare these days. It's so rare to have something like that.
Yeah.
The house that we live in, the people who lived here before us were like the community facilitators in the neighborhood. Okay. We are not. So like everybody in our neighborhood, you looked to this house to be like the heartbeat of the community. Yeah. We're just like, we're just here. Sorry.
If you plan it, we'll come. That's how I am.
Like even the parties, like the Christmas party, they had like block parties, and they were always like in this house. Awesome. And so I'm always wondering, like, what is it like for them to like see us never? They all know where the bathroom is. Everybody in our street would like be able to walk in here and just know. Anyway.
Yeah.
I am grateful that I've been writing down my dreams.
Oh, yeah.
I'm in the habit of writing down my dreams, which then trains me to pay attention to my dreams while I'm having them, because I know I'm going to need to write them down. Mm-hmm. I've even dreamt of writing down my dream while it's happening so that I don't forget when I wake up.
Nice.
Think like I've done that where like I'll like save something on a computer in my dream, thinking that I'll be able to wake up and then open it up and see the thing. Like I'm very tied to the waking world in my dreaming world.
Interesting.
And it makes me pay attention.
It's incredibly insightful.
Dreams. It is. Well, when I was little, I used to like when I was like in late high school, early college, I trained myself to lucid dream. And I was lucid dreaming maybe like 3 or 4 nights a week, and it was awesome. But it took a lot of work, and it wasn't the best for my actual restful sleep. Yeah. But those muscles are still in there, so they're kind of like waking up and starting to work out a little bit. And I'm very keenly noticing some huge, massively recursive patterns in my dreams that it doesn't even take a lot of thought to figure out what they're about, and it's helping me unlock certain levels of discovery of my own interiors that I really was completely blind to without being able to investigate my dreams. So the fact that I've been writing them down every night has gotten me to that place. And now that I'm at that place, I've got insights that have been really, I've just been able to make some huge strides in figuring out what's going on in there. Just from waking up every morning and just sending them in an email to myself.
Nice.
First thing. Most of them are ridiculous, but hey. That's what I'm grateful for.
I love it. That's good. That's really good.
You want to know? You want me to give you a teaser before we have to run off? Yeah. The one recursive theme that's happening lately that I like literally every night for the last maybe almost month. I'm in a group of a large group of people, like 50 plus people, and we're all arriving at a vacation spot. So it's like, picture like a ski trip with a group of people, but that group of people is massive, and you're all sharing a giant building, which is like tons of bunks. And it's often in a mountain, like it's either snowboarding or sledding or something like that. But it's always like a huge, huge group of people. And the dream always takes place right when we're all arriving and filing in and figuring out what we're going to do during this trip. Or like the first day of the thing. But that's been, I've relived that dream almost every time I've fallen asleep for a long time now.
Interesting.
So noodle on that, and then next week just tell me what you think is going on.
We could do some fun dream analysis. I have a tool I rarely practice because people get weirded out when I start talking about dreams, so I'd have to pull it out. I'm going to do that, make a note.
We should analyze each other's dreams in one episode.
That would be awesome. Okay. Check.
Will be awesome. Until then, thank you for loving me. Thank you for being there.
Bye. We are grateful for you. Thank you for listening. And if you like what we're doing and you want more, then you can join our tribe to interact with other like-minded individuals. You can go through our Patreon page, which is patreon.com/True North Podcast 11.
Is it Podcast 11 or is it True North 11?
Oh, shit.
It's in our show notes. If you want more than that, you want some more hands-on healing stuff that we do, I do actual energy healing and body work, and Abby does life coaching and workshops. You can find the URLs in our show notes when we figure out what they are.
And we are always trying to increase our reach and bring more people to find their true north. So we would really appreciate it if you could leave a review and rate it in whatever podcast platform you use.
Done. That's perfect. That was
perfect. The gratitude.
This one. Hang on. And one last thing. What are you grateful for? There. I said it. I said the thing.